All right, we're going to go over our trades for today on October 17th. I traded two stocks today. I traded SPRC and TPST, a total of 3 trades. I made 234 on the day. I made 194 from SPRC and a small $40 winner from TPST. Before I go ahead and jump into the stocks, though, I want to go ahead real quick and I want to switch to the prep list for the day. And this is something I'm trying out here. So pre-market, I went ahead and just made some observations from the last week or so and what I'm kind of seeing pre-market. And also, I tried out something new. So in the past, when I would take a trade, what I would do is I would go ahead on this chart here and I would go ahead and log every trade I took, not only to kind of give me some time to cool down from the trade, but also just to kind of see where I'm at on the day. I like doing this. I still think it's a good idea. But in addition to doing this, I went ahead and experimented with writing out my notes for the trade after I take it. So I took 3 trades here and I wrote my notes out for afterwards. You can go ahead and pause if you want. I'll kind of go over them roughly whenever I go over the trades themselves. But I want to focus on the observations that I made pre-market because this, I think, kind of set the tone for what I was looking for the day. And the big thing is just biotech. For the last maybe 2 weeks, we've had massive biotech movers. I actually want to go ahead real quick here, switch back to Thinkorswim, because there was one, TPST, this stock, about 5 days ago, right? Something like that. It had an absolutely monster move, right? From 17 cents up to $11. So it went up like 4,000%. And as a result, a lot of sympathy, momentum started kicking in, and a lot of biotech have just been running like crazy for the last week or so. So that was on the forefront of my mind going into this, and that was one of the big things I was thinking about. I even mentioned it here, going into market, 5 stocks on watch. There's a lot of potential, and 4 of the 5 of the top gainers pre-market on my watch list were biotech. So it seems that this theme has carried over, at least for the short term, and that was what was on the forefront of my mind. And I also noted that a lot of the biotech stocks, I say here, some of the past biotech movers have been holding their gains more than normal, because a lot of times when you have this hype and momentum, usually it's a little unjustified, and you'll see some sort of correction, if not just a complete correction. A lot of these cheaper stocks are cheap for a reason, right? They're usually poor in some aspect of the company. And I did note that here. A lot of the stocks that were gapping were in the $2 to $5 range. So a lot of cheaper stocks. But in addition to them being cheaper, a lot of them were very low float, right? TPST, 14 million. SPRC, 500,000. So these are very low float stocks. Normally even just like maybe 5 million is pretty low, but for 500,000, that's excessively low. So that was something I was thinking about going into the trading day. Let's go ahead now and jump over, and we'll actually go over my trades now. So the first 2 trades I took were on SPRC. Both of them were sized down because, like I said, the float's very low on this stock. It was only 500,000, and I felt to kind of mitigate risk, I needed to size down. The price was fine, right? $5, that's normally what I will trade around, and I consider doing normal size and something like that. But for the low float, just the potential volatility was way too dangerous, and I wanted to kind of play a little safer with my risk itself through share size. So I marked out both these levels pre-market. They weren't marked out during the day. And my initial plan, because when I was watching the market open here, my initial plan was to do a potential first entry if we saw an immediate flush, or like a flush over the next 15 minutes down to this level at about 580. And then if we see continued selling pressure, I figured the next strong level for a bounce was down here around 455. So those were my 2 initial levels. But I was keeping in my head to try and kind of experiment a little bit. Normally, I will not trade this aggressively for a first trade, because this is a pretty aggressive trade. The stock here was up at around a high of 844, and in a 5-minute time frame, it went down to a low of 720. So a full dollar drop, about a 15% drop in the course of 5 minutes. That's normally a good entry. But considering the overall size of this move, right, going from $2.80 up to almost $9, the stock was up over 200% at one point. And a 15% correction is actually a pretty small correction. So this was a more aggressive entry than I normally would take. And I was aware of that. I was consciously making it a note that I want to be a little bit more aggressive to try and kind of play this biotech hype. So I went ahead. I was a little more aggressive. I did size down to try and mitigate risk because I knew that the float was much lower. But I saw a lot of buying pressure here, so I decided to jump in and try and take a stab at it. I initially sold half, and I was going to try and hold for a bounce because since I'm entering so much earlier in the move, or before the move is over, not early, because this has already moved a lot. But since this is still at a higher point in the move, it is possible that we could see a continuation because, I mean, if stocks are going up, some of them like 4,000%, this one's only up 200%. It's at least somewhat rational to think that maybe you could at least see like a return to high of day or something, or even maybe a return to $8. So I gave it a little bit of time. I sold half, but I was seeing a lot of sellers stepping in, and I got nervous, and I figured I was up $100, so I'm just going to take it off. I am still trading somewhat aggressively here, so maybe I should just be a little conservative because I'm seeing things start to go against me. So I just cut the trade. The trade was for a winner of, how much did I make on it? $108 on the first trade. So really good first trade. I would give it probably a B quality setup because, again, it wasn't the proper pullback that I normally wait for. I normally want to see a much bigger pullback. So I'll give it a B quality. I sized, I think, appropriately. And yeah, that's about all I can really say about that. Second trade happened about 30 minutes later. Same stock. I had, like I said, I had several other stocks on watch. Just to bring up some notable mentions here. MNTS was a stock I was watching. And, yeah, so at this point I was watching this pullback. But there was one thing that turned me off, and let me just turn off my webcam real quick here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. In the bottom right is the yearly chart, and you can see this thing has just been bleeding and bleeding and bleeding, and there's a lot of investors heavily underwater. In general, I don't really like trading these moves because, right, statistically, if it's just been bleeding for the last year, you would assume it keeps bleeding, and even if it does move, you know there's a lot of people trying to get out at the smallest pop. So I don't really like trading this. That was one of the big things that steered me away from the stock. Normally, I will still consider trading them if the flush is big enough. But I was actually looking for around a 450 to 440 for an entry because I don't have it marked here, but there's a good amount of support here. If we did see a flush from $6 down to all the way down to like 440, that's a pretty big drop, and I thought that that could be a good entry if we got it. We didn't get it. It ended up going about 50 to 60% of the way there. So it was moving enough to where I was keeping it on watch. I had it on my watch list here, had it pulled up on a chart on another monitor, keeping an eye on it, but it didn't quite get there. So I didn't trade it. But yeah, back to my second trade. And this one was probably the best trade setup that I had today. I would give this maybe an A quality. Maybe an A, probably A, not A+. So yeah, this was the original entry I wanted. I had these two levels marked out, and seeing it consolidate above this level here before seeing the flush down is really the ideal setup for me. I want to see a consolidation above the level I want to a flush to my level. And then I want to see the price hesitating. And we did get that. It did temporarily break below it. It went to a low of 570. So I was hoping it would hold around 580-ish, 590. That was the ideal for me, but with only 500,000 shares, it's going to be a little bit more volatile in general. And that's also why I didn't enter right away. I got 603 for my entry, and that was mainly because I was waiting for some kind of confirmation, because with these kind of flushes, yeah, and again, the stock was still up massively. It was probably up around 150 to 100% at this point, so it still had a lot it could pull back. So I wanted some kind of confirmation. I saw that it was rebounding quite hard, and I wanted to try and get in here, but I ended up punching around 590 for the entry, and just the slippage or just the volatility of the move caused me to get filled around 603, which is honestly still not a terrible entry. It's not the greatest because if you have a low around 570, I had about 30 cents off from the bottom. And I did consider adding, I had my finger on the trigger to buy another 400 shares to add to full size, or I guess just regular size here. But I was just really turned off by the super low float. I don't really want to add and have such a large position relative to what I'm normally trading when something can move this quickly. Maybe if the move was super, super extreme, I could see it. This one's kind of extreme, right? You consolidated and then you had a drop from like 660 down to 570. So another, this one's probably closer to like a 15-20% drop. So pretty sizable drop, but I don't know. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I didn't feel like the risk was quite low enough for me, so I just stuck with 400. I got the full move. I was targeting 625, did get it, so another good trade there. And I made, how much did I make on this one? I made $88 on this one, so a little bit less than the other one, but still really good. All right, so on to the third trade, TPST. Right. So this is the one that has been making those big moves. This was the one that went up 4,000%. And this one's been very crazy. The last few days, this thing's just been bonkers. And I was aware of that going into the day. I had marked out pre-market that there was a lot of resistance at this level, and I was eyeing for a break and a retest of this level, and we did get it. So, right, we saw a flush down to the level. I bought at 773. I was waiting for some kind of signals of a bounce, and we did end up getting it. So the low here was 762. So it was 9 cents from the bottom. So a really good entry relative to how much it pushed down to. But because this one's so whiplashy, even though there's 14 million shares, I did size down, and I was a little bit more hesitant because we were getting close to the halt level. And something that I've experienced with halts is I haven't really gotten burned by it because I've been usually getting out of the way a lot. I've been burned once or twice, though, where the price will get close to the halt level, it'll go away, and then it'll flush straight back to the halt level, then gap down, right? And if this went back and it halted at like 750 and gapped down to like 720, all of a sudden I'm down 150, $200. So I'm a lot more inclined, if it looks like it's going to reverse on a halt setup, to just get out. It doesn't matter if I'm up slightly, break even, down slightly, just get out. And that's kind of what happened here. So my target was 795. I was aiming for around 22 cents relative to the price. And I had my offer at 794 because 795 had like a big seller on it. And it went to 791. I tried to move it down to 791, and then it dropped to 785, and then it went to 780. And I'm starting to see this selling pressure come back. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, this could be going and retesting potentially to do a halt down. So I'm just going to cut the trade. I managed to get actually a good fill exiting, getting out at 783. Maybe that's because like the momentum did come back and it did end up moving up, and I would have gotten filled at 795. But I definitely don't regret getting out of the way here. It looked like I took a bad exit, but if this thing did continue down, like my losses could have been around $150, $200. So I definitely regret getting out of the way here, even if it was just a small winner. But yeah, I mean, those are my trades. So took 3 in total, 234. But yeah, I hope you found this interesting or educational in some way. If you did, please leave a like, and thanks for watching.